Hello, everyone. My name is Marek. It's been quite a while that I've been active on YouTube, and so I just thought that this video and this story would be really interesting. Come back and a bit of a hobby project there as well. Long story short, this last weekend I actually ran a half marathon, but surprisingly, if you would have asked me like half a year ago, I would say I have literally zero running experience. So if you're an experienced runner and you've done this thing a lot, there's nothing to watch for you here. I was never the type of guy that would be running, and running would be my obsession or hobby or anything like that. To be actually really honest, the only thing that I've done running, it was really back in elementary school when our PE teacher would make us do so. Besides that, no, nothing like that. So it has been at least like 2 or 3 years since I've done any sort of exercise. This summer I was really thinking, okay, how can I get back to sport? I always really loved one thing about running, and that was that the only thing that you require is the running shoes. And hey, that's not that difficult to have or get, or even when you're traveling. That's the best part that I was thinking about. It's like I travel a lot, and if I travel, how cool would it be to just like decide to go for a run and explore the area, explore the city and everything. So I think it was back in July actually. I picked up my running shoes, we could say, and I went for a jog. But truth to be said, it really was not go as expected. Like, won't be able to even run for like a mile. I would always have to take breaks, sort of to walk in between. Back at that time, I was like, hey, could I run 5 kilometers, which I think is about like 3 miles, before end of the year, which I would have half a year to achieve. And that seemed really like it's a difficult challenge. I, went on the first, the second, the third jog. I would just like gradually increase the distance and increase the speed that I was running with, but I still wasn't able to really do it nonstop. But a couple of workouts in, surprisingly, especially for me, I was able to achieve that goal. Really, the story and why I decided to say it out loud is because I think it would inspire, or it could inspire other people who never thought of running as their hobby. I was one of them, and who knows, like, my hobbies might change in the future, but what I really just want to share is this really fast progress. So I was able to hit this magical distance of 5 kilometers, and then, yeah, I think I just kept on going, and further a couple of workouts in, I was running in a park here uphill. Then I was just sort of going in circles and looking at the distance that I ran. And I was like, wow, like it just kept on adding up. And so I was able to run these 11 kilometers, which for me, again, was just really unthinkable. That was the very first time that an idea popped up in my head of like, okay, well, could I take on a marathon one day? As I got home, actually, the following day really put me in place in a way that I did feel pain in my knees. I talked to a couple of people, and if there's an advice that I can give out is to increase your distances gradually. I had to, take a bit of a rest, but then I continued running again, thinking of that idea, like, hey, is there a race around me nearby that I could sign up for? This is, I think, another great thing. Like, if you have something to train towards, it just gives you a tremendous amount of motivation. At least, like, it gave me that amount of motivation. And I, funnily enough, found a race that actually was happening in my city here. So I signed up for that. I think it was like 3 months out. If I still had a decent time to train for that. And so I would, I just kept on running. And I think down the line, it required about 40 runs from my side to actually then be able to go and run the half marathon. Another thing that they say is also that you don't have to really run that final distance that you train for. You can get close to it, but you don't have to run the actual full distance. So that's also an advice that I followed. I know that in the beginning, my friends would laugh at me on the Strava and be saying like, hey, did you just go for a quick walk, or why is your pace so slow? But actually, it did turn out that, that's what I learned about, is that even if you do those, if you're thinking like, oh, I'm running too slow or whatever else, it's not that bad. It's not a bad thing, because there is apparently this concept of what's called the zone 2 training. The way I understand it is that you're trying to keep your heart rate low, and that actually helps with, improving your endurance and, allowing you to later run faster and longer. Then moving on with my training, what I would typically do, so there is another concept. I'm just like throwing it out there. You can always find more resources about all I'm saying online. This is more of a story. It's not really a video meant to teach you anything about running or, make sure you're running the right way. This is supposed to hopefully just inspire you that it is achievable. If I was able to do it, I do believe now that everyone else can do that too. So another thing that I want to throw out there is that basically I think I was more or less just combining 2 types of trainings. Again, if you go online and you look up training for half marathon, you will find plenty of training plans, as they call them. But I was either doing what's called intervals. So for instance, I would do 10 times 400 meters with a break in between, or I would just simply go for a long run or whatever you want to call it. There's been this amazing opportunity also in my city. A friend told me about it, like, hey, you should sign up for something that's called the Run Club. I literally did not know anything about run clubs, but it's really great. Like, it's a group of people. They would likely meet up in where you are once or twice or 3 times a week to go for a run together. For instance, the one where I gone, and there were 3 different distances. It was 5 kilometer, 8 kilometer, and 12 kilometers. So then, I would typically just go for that 12 kilometer run. So yeah, I was quite pumped up, and I kept on training for this half marathon that I signed up for. But eventually I also came up with a goal. And then the goal that I set up for myself, where I was thinking about was, well, could I run this half marathon in under 2 hours? Which again, for some people, for experienced runners, this might just like sounds like, yeah, not a big deal, right? But for someone who has never run before, for me, this was incredibly fast tempo. Like when I was running, I would come close to the pace that was required to the full half marathon in under 2 hours. But I was nowhere knowing that I'll be able to do that throughout the whole race. I think it was like the 6th of October, 3 weeks to the race, when I, for the very first time, started to believe that this could be something achievable. But unfortunately, even that kind of idea quickly vanished as, I've gone on a couple of those runs where I just felt terrible and I was slow and I didn't feel like, again, what I set up was even achievable. Anyway, I kept on training. I might have made a small mistake where a couple of days prior to the race, I would be watching a lot of these videos about running form. It's super incredibly important to have a proper running form if you decide to really pick up running seriously. The main reason for that really is health, because a lot of people might be running, but they might be running wrong way. And that really will, I assume, just have a bad impact long term. As I was really hyped up, I went on this quick run before the race. I think it was 2-3 days before the race. So that I was just feeling this incredible pain in my hip. I don't think my body was used to that. I don't really know what I've done wrong. But even on the day of the race, I was just tired of overthinking whether I would be even able to finish the race. That little bit, had something to do with my mental state. But everything else that I could control, I really tried hard to control. It's almost, I don't know, I just find it that maybe I was too much into it. Because what I've done is I knew that my starting block will be at 9 a.m. So what I've done throughout the entire week prior to the race was that I would wake up before 7 a.m., have breakfast before 7 a.m., and then at 9, literally go for a short jog around the block, just to get my body used to the fact that we're waking up early and we're going for a run. I would just love to hope this is also something that contributed to the end result. Because then on October 27th, I actually stood up on the starting line of the half marathon, and it turned something that I would never thought of, that I would just thought of as wishful thinking, actually turned it into reality. I sprinted off the starting line. It is definitely not a good practice, and something that everyone will tell you it's a beginner's mistake, because what a lot of people would do is that they would be too fast at the beginning, and then they would burn out, and then they would have no spare energy to finish the race, continue the race. So quickly had a look at my watch as I gone through starting line, had to slow down, and then I just literally clinged on someone who was in front of me. It was this older guy. I was like, yeah, this guy's got a pretty good pace. I even wrote splits on back of my hand just to make sure that I know at what time I have to be at certain kilometer or mile. This kind of gave me also, I would say, like mental advantage. The fact that I was a little bit faster in the beginning just really gave me that comfort of, even if on the last mile and last kilometer I'll feel terrible and I'll be getting cramps or anything like that, I don't have to stress too much, because even if I just walk to the finish line, I still should be okay and still should be able to finish in the desired time. Also, luckily, I didn't feel my hip pain, so that was also great. Everything else pretty much worked out as I expected, and so I was crossing the finish line in 1 hour and 52 minutes. Anyway, what was I about to say? Which was incredible, and if there are 2 things I would do slightly differently, is just for the first thing to slow down towards the very end when you're crossing the finish line where people are cheering, even, really just enjoy that moment and perhaps even take a video, just have a good time, soak up the atmosphere. And then the second thing is just, I remember, I crossed that finish line and then I continued further to, get my medal and other things. But I just wish I would be able to, look back, or I would think of looking back at that finish line and just really thinking like, wow, this is something that you've trained for the past 4 months. And now it turned into reality. It was a really magical moment, a great feeling that no one really can take away from you. And yeah, like I said before, the reason why I'm sharing this story is really just to inspire other people that maybe are like me. That is something that's possible. And it's really mind-boggling for me how my mindset shifted from, hey, would I be able to run 5 kilometers/3 miles and, before Christmas, which was like 6 months out, shifted towards I am going to run a half marathon and I'm going to run it in under 2 hours, hopefully. The difference in that, the size of that goal was just disproportionate, really. So this is something that I find super, super fascinating. I don't know, even for me, it kind of leaves the feeling and thoughts in my head of maybe in the future, I really have to be careful in a way of like setting my goals, because sometimes you might just think, it can go both ways, right? Like sometimes you haven't tried something and you're just thinking, oh, I want to do this and I want to do it to the, until a certain date. And then you figure out, oh no, it's much tougher and much harder than I thought, versus what I've done here with running. I mean, in the beginning, I also thought it's going to be incredibly hard and difficult and impossible, really impossible to achieve. But eventually, with progress and with, all those trainings and practices, I was able to go much faster than I expected, which was just an amazing feeling. So yeah, that's the story of me running a half marathon, my first half marathon. I hope it inspired you a little bit. If it did, please consider giving this channel a subscribe, a thumbs up, like. Leave your comments below if you have any questions for me. I would be more than happy to answer them. Again, I'm no elite runner, anything like that. I'm just here to share my story and hopefully get you a little bit inspired. With that, I'll try to make more content and share more stories from my life, if possible and if time will allow. And until then, I'll see you in the next video. It's just, I don't have to release it. It's fine. I can just cut it for myself and keep it in my computer. I just wanted to give it a try. I wanted to have it as an experiment.